Good morning. Welcome to B Cube Sunday morning. It is a great Sunday. We have with us the one and only Harry Turtledove, or might I say Dr. Harry Turtledove, master of all things Byzantium, uh, and a guy who's
Escaped
got more.
historian, professional liar.
Hey, I have read the your one where you retold European history on American soil, with the Franco-Prussian War
Oh, yes.
as how few remain, and carried it all the way forward to the end. I'm on my third reading of that because I enjoy it so much. But my God, the number of subplots you keep going in that is amazing, and I think that George R. Martin knelt at your feet saying, "Show me how to kill another character that people like."
George is plenty good. I've known George 40 years now. George is plenty good at killing off his own characters. He doesn't need any help at all from me.
Well, you did good, but
Thank you.
more important than doing that good and killing your characters, you made us care about how they lived.
Well,
Uh,
that's sort of the point of the exercise because, fiction and especially alternate history, it's not just, and it's really not about the change you made, it's about the people and how the people reflect the changed world and how the people reflect the real world, because that's what fiction is always really about, is the world you're living in, not the world you're writing about.
yeah. By the way, we have a chat here. I didn't, since we were chatting so much before the show. Um, on the right side of your screen, you probably see a little screen called chat
Yep.
or a little tag. If you
Yep.
click it, you will see the chat, and people are going to make notes over there, and we can answer.
All right. Uh,
Uh,
that should dismay everyone.
if you want to. I some I sometimes do. I enjoy it. The Now you've got you know something like how many okay, I know you get asked this all the time. Roughly how many books you got out?
Oh, somewhere around 110, some, plus or minus a few. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean last week we were lucky. This is like a twofer. Last week we had your wife on, and I think
Yep.
she told us, but the it was a lot, but the just that now I had an actual cogent reason for bringing that up. Oh, to lead us to your most recent one that you've got coming out, what, tomorrow?
Day after.
So you want to tell us about that book?
The name of the book is Powerless. It is set in a world where Marxism, Leninism, Stalinism is as dominant an ideology as laissez faire capitalism is in the real world. It's set in the West Coast People's Democratic Republic, which used to be the states of Oregon, Washington, and California. It's set in the San Fernando Valley, where I happen to live in the real world. It's based on an idea that Václav Havel threw out in his essay, The Power of the Powerless, where he was talking about what might happen to a shopkeeper who gets a propaganda sign for a new campaign, and instead of putting it up in his front window, he crumples it up and throws it in the trash just because he's really sick of all this stuff. And I went from there. The first, what became the first two chapters of this appeared in as a novelette in fantasy and science fiction back in 2018, and Greg Benford read it and liked it and said, "You ought to make a novel out of that." And so I did. I mean, Greg and I go back a
Those
million.
are the two most frightening words you can ever hear when you publish a short story. For me, oh yeah, you should turn that into a novel.
I've done it, I think, twice.
So the anyway, so Greg Benford.
And so I thought, all right, what kind of a novel can I make out of this? And I was thinking, well, what about the Prague Spring of 1968 and socialism with a human face and trying to keep a communist state but loosen up a little bit on all the repressive ideology? What would that look like if somebody tried it in this world? So I wrote it.
Now I have got an interesting question, or not all of the question is interesting, but it's a question about what you said that interested me. Stalin, you said Stalinistic.
Marxism, Leninism, Stalinism. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought you had socialism in there, and I was wondering
Well,
how you.
that sort of comes with the territory.
Yeah, I was just trying to see how you managed to meld Stalinism and socialism
About the
together.
way that the Russians did.
Oh, totalitarianism.
Now that you meant, well, yes, that's what I was talking about.
Okay, I was just curious because being a socialist myself, I have a kinder, gentler view of socialism that doesn't include uh,
Well,
Stalin.
so did Dubček, and look what it got him. It got him a job in a forestry for 20 odd years.
But so I like the fact. I mean, and you pick normal people to get stuck in incredibly fancy, odd situations. I mean, in the American, your ones about that we were talking about the American Civil Wars and
Mm-hmm.
such. One of my favorite characters was a Southern private who had been a pharmacist. You know, you probably out of your
Yep.
10,000 characters, you probably don't remember him, but they shot him in the end.
Well, yes, that's what happens to characters sometimes.
Yeah. But I just find that that dominates a steel worker who turns into running concentration camps. You know,
Yeah, he was sort of modeled after Rudolf Höss, not Hess. Not the number two, number three Nazi, but the guy who really ran Auschwitz. H-O with a umlaut, with an umlaut, S-S. I can't talk this morning. How are you?
yeah, Reggie. Oh, we got people here who really have read your stuff through and through. He actually threw out the name of the characters,
Yep.
and that is the right name. Um, but but anyway, just because that's my favorite set, let's go back to your favorite or your most current work. Um, so, you excited about it coming out?
Oh, I mean, if you're not excited to see yourself in print again, then you're probably in the wrong racket. You know, it doesn't get boring. Here, I do not have a physical copy of the book, but I have an advanced reading copy which I can hold up and show people.
Cool. Oh, here, do me a favor. Go down to where that gear box is on the right, on the bottom.
I'm I'm not. I see a need help. I see a private chat. I do not have this thing. So,
Oh, that's a
all right.
bummer.
Oh wait, here. Okay,
And
yeah,
it's
I
your
got it.
settings, and it'll allow you to go in and unmirror it because we're seeing it backwards. So you go to your video and hit the video,
Yeah,
the mirror
okay.
button.
Hang on. I am. It's not. Oh wait, there it is.
There,
Ha! It's a miracle.
it is. That's an interesting cover. The I like that you finally, I mean, not finally, but you've settled in. What's the image of?
Well, the images of a rather ratty downtown Los Angeles, that's LA City
Yeah.
Hall there in the center.
Oh, the only reason I'm asking is because you've got it set perfectly to reflect off of the light. There you go.
Well, there we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
I look forward to reading that. It's going to come out on Audible pretty
Well,
soon after.
yes.
Good. I may. I had cataracts bad enough that I can use my computer and
Oh,
stuff.
I did.
Audiobooks.
I I I, I did that. I had them taken out 5 6 years ago, and it's made an enormous difference in my life.
It did. I mean, I had actually had them tell me I couldn't drive anymore. And
Uh-huh. I was in the
you
same
know what
boat.
my solution was? I bought an electric tricycle. And I drove that thing for 7 months. I had my surgery, can drive now, but I still go ahead and take my ride that tricycle around.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I had to take an eye test to get my driver's license renewed, and there was no way in hell I was going to pass it before I had the cataract surgery, but I did it easily afterwards.
Well, as it sets, I'm crossed the line into God. This sounds like something Jeffrey Epstein would say, but barely legal. The
Yeah, but he's on the other side of the
yeah, well, I
line.
mean, see, I would care. He didn't, and L.A. looks weird without the Marines, huh? Okay. You know,
Please.
that's I have I have a 80,000 words in a novel set called "Breaking Up is Hard to Do," uh,
Hmm.
focused around that. But we're doing ours in Texas. But
Well, I have about 30,000 words in a three-part invention with me and James Morrow and Cat Rambo called "And the Last Trump Shall Sound," about the breakup of the
I
United
saw that Kat
States.
had that a book with you there. I saw it sitting up there. I
Yeah.
didn't get any chance to go in and look at the details, but I was just so surprised.
Well, I did the first one that describes the breakup, and Jim did the next one and did horrible things with Mike Pence. And Cat and Cat did the third one, and
Well, I
I
can tell you this: I'm not going to look at it beyond even looking at the cover.
no, I understand that completely. I was in a situation like that. Uh, Roger McBride Allen and I, back in the 80s, started from exactly the same Stephen Jay Gould quote about wondering about how Homo sapiens would have treated other species of hominids if they had survived into modern times. And we both did stories about this that came out at about the same time. And, I didn't know about his till it came out. He knew about mine because I did it a story at a time and I sold him to Analog and Asimov's. And I asked him, what did you think when you saw that I was doing this stuff too? And he said, I threw the magazine across the room, so.
I can see, but it's better than reading it because once something like that, it's like a brain worm, and you don't mean it to
Hmm.
be that way, but ideas get in your brain.
Yes, yes. I tend very hard whenever I possibly can to avoid, you know, looking at stuff that may overlap with
Yeah,
things I'm
like that
doing.
movie Civil War. I have
Oh
every
yeah.
intention of watching it after I upload the book, but not until.
Uh-huh. The spoof movie, The Confederate States of America. I avoided that for years. Finally, I saw it. I was at a con with the guy who made it, and he said he'd been avoiding my stuff for exactly the same reason.
That is
Not wanting trouble.
that is funny. I now oh, Gordon, I thought Gordon came on and said good morning. Oh, thanks, Andrew. Keep me in anticipation. Now, let me ask you another question as long as we're just rambling around. By the way,
That's what I'm
oh,
good
good,
for.
because um,
It may not be free association, but it's cheap.
do you watch movies much?
Not a whole lot. I soak up things through print. I always have.
I got up yesterday morning, had to go to Walmart for something or the other, got on my trike and said, "Oh shoot, my battery's dead." And so then I drove up, and as long as I was that mobile up there, I saw Superman was playing, and so I just went in
Mm-hmm.
and watched it.
Okay. How
Oh
was it?
my God, this is the Superman we wished for out of every Superman ever made. Uh,
Okay. Good. It's about
I will tell
time.
you, Lex Luthor is Lex Luthor. Crypto is a real dog. He's not some magic dog that you can give him 3 paragraphs worth of instructions and then he'll fly off and do them. No, he comes in and you know what? When I say the zoomies about a dog, you know what I mean?
Oh yes, cats do that too.
Crypto gets the zoomies. And the response is like, whoever wrote this has a dog and has a small zoomy dog. And it is
Okay.
just, it does everything I've always wished a Superman movie would do. Like, they, no matter what the problem the Superman was facing, you would find some mysterious piece of Krypton technology or secret power that he had yet to reveal that wasn't canon, so to speak, that would solve the problem, you know? And it was
Okay.
like, okay, what's the phrase, ex machinus deus, or,
Deus
yeah,
ex machina.
it's
Yes.
like, or they could say that or Superman plot resolution. Um, the, but it is just, and so I made a post on Facebook saying, best Superman ever. And Superman movie. And somebody that can remain nameless, not on my friends list, um, popped in and said Henry Cavill or Cavill was the best Superman. And I said, well, have you watched the movie? No. Okay. You've heard the story about Admiral Rickover kicked an officer out of the Naval Nuclear Power Program because they were having dinner,
No, but you're.
and the officer
Mm-hmm.
reached for the salt and salted his food before he tasted it. And he said,
Okay.
"I will
I
not have a
gotcha.
person in my corps that applies corrective actions before he understands the problem."
Okay.
So that's kind of like felt like what I was dealing with. But also, Liam Westcott says the Trumpers are in a spin over the new Superman. They said he's
Yeah,
woke.
I see it. Yeah. Well, he's an immigrant. You know, arriving here illegally. The guys who created him are a couple of Jews, one from Canada. Yes, of course he's woke, for God's
Yeah.
sake. He's been woke for 80 odd
And they
years.
left out the fact that Hawk Girl is from Thangar. But Well, depending on which hot girl she was. Um, but yeah, it was just lovely movie. I'll say it that, and I don't want to accidentally drop a spoiler on somebody's head. Yeah.
Okay.
So, what's your next book going to be after this?
The next one is called Lightning Runes. It's a sequel to my noirish post-war detective novel urban fantasy called Twice as Dead, which came out this past spring.
Yeah.
And as the title will make you guess, not all the Nazis have entirely disappeared.
Hell, I can agree that not all the Nazis have disappeared. We've
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things I really didn't expect was that as an old man, I would have to watch the rise of fascism again. I mean, Faulkner knew what he was talking about. The past isn't dead, it's not even past. And here we are again. Lucky us.
Oh, I sat on a panel once with you at Oricon many years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the present hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, I know. I remember that con.
Oh my God! This is where I want to go back in time and whop my mom on the head. This is a woman who could cut cedar for a living, could haul out 150, 200-pound cedar log on her shoulders, go home, cook lunch after we did this, or when we were living on the farm, would go out there and drive a tractor or a truck during harvest season, and then come home and cook dinner while the guys went down in the basement and got underneath the shower and rinsed off, telling me and had raised 11 kids, telling me that she couldn't vote for Hillary Clinton because she just didn't think a woman was strong enough to be president. That's why
Yeah,
I wanted to whop
well,
my mom on the head gently.
I understood, and instead we have Donald the Taco. So lucky
Yeah, we
us.
do. Lucky us. But I tell you, Donald, though, has sold me a lot of books. Um,
Yeah, I'm in one of them.
yes, which one? I forget.
Alternate
Oh
Liberty, I think
yes,
it
you are.
was.
I was caught off guard by. Don't laugh. I don't remember every story, but you'd think I would remember that I had Harry Turtledove novella, short story, in there.
It's a short. I wrote it a few years ago. Gordon Van Gelder had wanted an anthology. Welcome to Dystopia. During Trump's first
Oh,
term. And so I wrote it there, and I warned you it was a reprint, and you bought it anyway, which shows how much you know.
oh, don't laugh. I limit my reprints to about 5 a book. Because
Hmm.
if I don't, I mean, let's face it, somebody writes a story and it gets in their cousin's anthology and sells 12 copies, it's still a reprint. I'm not going to stress about it.
Yeah,
You maybe sold 10,000 copies through Gordon Van Gelder.
I,
It's still, we're a different audience than you normally do.
hmm
Um, but that's the gist of it. We're actually going to do, just so you're informed, um, a second volume. I wasn't sure we were going to, but the
Send me an email so that I'll actually remember it. Things that go in one ear go out
oh
the
hey,
other one.
with
But if I
me,
could see it,
there's
I could see it with
so few things for it to stick to when it goes in one ear. It does, just like you said, go out there.
well, Oh yeah, I mean, if you look in my left ear, I promise you can look out my right.
I'll send you
You
an
know,
email on it. And uh, but oh, Liam said he suggested to he already sold you out, but it's fun. The
yeah, Laura's told me that somebody on Facebook had told her about that anthology, and I thought, do I have a story that would fit there? And yes, I do. And so
yeah, it's kind of like
oh, that's how that happened.
when I was talking to Joe Haldeman once about doing something for me. His fundamental short words on it were "talk to gay,"
Yep.
and I never got a story out of him, but I did get him as a guest at one of my conventions I was programming for. And he said, "What do you want me to do?" And I said, "What do you want to do?" And he said, "Well, I got my guitar." So we took Joe Haldeman and let him play the guitar for opening ceremonies instead of having to talk about anything. That was
Okay.
fun. Of course, speaking of fun, the you you don't fit into a pattern in your writing. You know, I know you're the master of the alternative history, blah blah.
I'm an escaped historian. What am I
Yeah,
going to do?
the but you write so much that is not. I mean, there's the element of what you learn from history, but we there's, but if I said, hey, here's this science fiction, they'll, one where space aliens come down and force a alliance of all the World War II villains.
That was,
That was one of the
you know, I,
first books of yours I ever read.
it's funny. I got the idea. What would, the idea came to me in steps back long before I was able to write it. I mean, had the skill to write it, had the knowledge to write it, you know, that it might not be as easy as it sounds to invade an industrialized planet from space if you didn't want to trash it completely. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then I thought, well, what planet would make it more interesting? And I thought, Earth? Yeah, that's probably a good choice. And then I thought, when? And I thought, how about World War II? Because everybody's trying to build things as fast as they possibly can. And there'd be a lot of stuff to throw at the aliens. And what can we do to make the aliens not so far ahead of us that it's just a walkover? Well, what if they're reptiles and they're real conservative and they don't change very fast and they don't think that we do either till they find out? And that was the thought process. And then there was reading and thinking about what might happen and growing up for close to 20 years. And when I had finished and sold Guns of the South, my agent asked me, okay, what are you going to do next? And I thought, well, if I'm not big enough to try this now, I probably never will be. So I started writing it. And I guess it worked. I'm all right now. I am one of these people who needs to tell everybody who's listening to me, do not try this at home because it's dangerous, because I am one of the most total right by the seat of your pants people you will ever meet. I don't know what's going to happen until it does. I'm telling myself the story at the same time as I'm telling everybody
I
else the
had
story.
suspicions, but um,
Well, about 2/3 of the way through the last World War book, I had no idea how it was going to
well,
end. And that was a disturbing
you
thought.
shocked me on that book. The oh my God, who was semi-likable Southern spy master with the steel rim glasses.
Oh no, not Luther Bliss. No, no, we're talking about the World War books. With the
Oh,
alien
okay.
invaders. And I thought, how the heck am I going to end this? Oh no, you know, there were far fewer guidelines to history in the World War books than I mean, with Timeline 191, I had a pretty definite model of how
Say,
things
okay,
were going to
timeline
work.
191.
Yeah, the one that starts with how few remain and goes on from
Yeah,
there.
that one. I don't
Because
know. Yeah, that one. That you actually have a number for that timeline?
well, no, it's called. A lot of people started calling it that because it's based on Lee not losing Special Order
Ah, okay,
191.
yeah, and then the Battle of Antietam, I think. Yeah,
Antietam, yeah,
you never
just
called
before
the Battle of
Antietam,
Antietam.
no, there isn't a Battle of Antietam. Lee gets up into Pennsylvania and fights McClellan on his terms, not on McClellan's, and beats the
Yeah, I've
snot out of him.
McClellan's just unwavering successes going up the peninsula to Richmond will always live in my mind as I never
Yeah,
understood him. I'm not the way you wrote stuff, but no, just how he managed to screw that up.
he had a bad case of the slows.
Uh, but no, like as we, I was telling you, you surprised me on the 191 books, which I never knew. Great piece of trivia. That, um, well, is it how jealously do you guard your spoiler alerts?
Seeing as those have been out for like 20 years, it's probably not extremely
Well,
dangerous.
it was just the way you opened it with what that character did. Because I worked at Hanford, uh, and
Hmm.
there's something weird. There's no green building out there. That on the second floor there's a hoist and double doors opening it up, and that that the bomb came out those doors and got loaded on a truck right there. And it's just a
Hmm.
second floor of the first floor is just now an office building, or was before they tore it down, and it's kind of um, there. Yeah, Clarence Potter was the character's name. So I got some vague familiarity of all the stuff you were writing about, and it was just fascinating to see the Manhattan Project uh, done different.
Yeah, well, I was goofing.
The it was just good, but just the fact that the whole rest of the world is doing planes and trains and relatively high tech approach to delivery, and he drove a truck all night long.
Well, I mean, the logistics of delivering a bomb from the Confederacy to Philadelphia are a little bit different from the ones for delivering one from Saipan, over
Well,
Hiroshima.
I just looked and I just said by that time you fooled me that they even had a bomb. Uh, so that was well done. Uh,
Thank you.
well, most of your stuff is well done, and those Lee's Lost Orders piece, you know, you can just feel yourself cringing. The cigars, the
Yep.
you now nobody has dogs.
Oh, well, I'm a cat person, so what can I
Just
tell you?
curious, had to get that
Lots of
out
people have.
there.
That's fine. There, I mean, you will find a fair number of cats in my books, but you will not find a lot of dogs because I like cats better. I'm
Well, I
allowed to do
mean, no,
that.
I mean if uh, I got a cat that lives outside that I feed occasionally.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, Liam says that is his favorite series. Yeah, You missed it.
Yeah.
Liam
Well,
missed the
thank you. That
conversation that took place before the show where I explained or I confessed to Father Harry here that I am
I ain't that much older than
well.
you are.
I'm reading it through for the third time. Um, the whole shebang. Now, can I ask you another question about that series? As long as it's Liam's favorite.
Assuming I know anything, which is
Well, I'm
always
trying to
dubious.
avoid the Star Trek trope of where the fan comes up to William Shatner and says, "On this episode, when you right before you guys transport out, you turn to so and so and say blah blah," and the Shatner character at that point would look at him and say, "Huh?" You know.
Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah.
pretty good at that.
Well, after you did the 1881 with Lincoln, the general,
Lincoln,
the fight with Custer. And by the way, I love the way you handled Custer. And he must have been fun to
you
write,
know what made that? You know what made that series
huh?
go, Bob? You ever see photographs of French World War One generals with their pot bellies and their big bushy white mustaches
Patan
and
or uh,
yeah, Pétain and all of them. They look like that, and it occurred to me that if Custer had lived, he would be 75 in 1914,
yeah,
and okay, I've got a character. What do I do with him? What do I do
you can
to
do
him?
what the French generals did. Think that men were disposable and I can get as many as I want.
Well, that pretty much is the case.
I
Yes.
the But back to the 1881. It struck me that you really wanted to do something with the the Spanish American War era period, and you didn't. Is there a draft sitting in the bottom drawer?
No. What the real thing that How Few Remain does is that it explains how and why the Confederate States and the United States ended up on opposite sides of the European alliance system, because I was really interested in World War One and from then
Oh
on.
God, yeah. There were some great books on it, and again, not something that they taught us a whole lot about in school. It might as well.
No, World War Two has pretty much ousted World War One from getting taught,
Well,
you know, and everybody thinks of that, of the Second World War, as the big event, but the First World War was the one that set all that stuff up, and what happened and what didn't happen and what might have happened. And you can think of all kinds of alternatives that spring out of the First World
oh
War.
God, yeah. I mean,
You know,
considering how many Americans thought we went in on the wrong side.
there was some of that. The other thing is that if the Germans had won quickly, the 20th century probably would have been the German century and not the American one, because one of the big reasons that you know we got the bomb as fast as we did was because all the nuclear physicists ran away from Hitler. And if the Kaiser didn't have any problem with Jews, all the Jewish physicists and all their friends would have stayed in Germany. And guess who would have got the bomb first? By a long shot.
Mexico.
Right. But of course.
Hey, I just know I thought you handled so much of the history so well, and it does. I mean, you are a
Thank
historian,
you.
and you're a damn fine writer,
I was once upon
huh?
a time. I say I was once upon a
Well,
time.
the I find that I love history books, stories, and so when I can read them, and most interesting, for example, did you ever read a book called The First Salute about the Dutch?
Oh God, a million years
But
ago.
again, it's a the thing I loved about it is not the details of the story, but the perspective it gives on the American Revolution that we would have
Hmm.
never, you'll never find in a classroom in America.
Yeah.
It's just fun as and like we were talking about Byzantium. Um, Once you're hooked on it, you there's so much the philosophical difference between the
It's a
East and
it's
West Roman Empire on
it's a whole nother world, and there's just as much going on there as there is in Western Europe. I mean, the other one, of course, that I don't have the languages and the knowledge to approach properly, and we were talking about that a little bit too before we went on, is China. That's a whole different funhouse mirror of what was going on at the other end of Eurasia.
it was the now I tell you there is a book I can recommend. It was called Justinian's Flea, and it tells an
Yeah.
interesting story about the Emperor of Persia who built a
Hmm.
throne room with three thrones in it. One for him, one for the Emperor of the Roman Empire, and one for the Emperor of China. They
Yes.
that our modern vision of the interconnection of the ancient world is flawed beyond belief. That
Hmm. There is a lot of study going on right now about the Silk Road and all the interconnections, and it's about time, is all I
I
have to
mean,
say.
King Edward received mass from a Catholic priest from China who was trained in a monastery in China because Genghis Khan invited all the religions of the world. He figured more is better to come
Mhm.
there and set up centers of study.
There were a couple of small Jewish colonies in China too, in Kaifeng and a couple of other
Yeah,
places,
it's.
and
I mean, I hate to say this,
yeah,
but the world might have been better if Genghis Khan had stayed the ruler for a longer. I know.
yeah. Well, I mean, some large percentage of the population of Asia is descended from Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan did all right for himself. He is probably the man with the most descendants that who we know about.
That very well could him and Elon Musk give history time. But well, I was forever uh, curious because I hadn't read, but my wife's 23andMe thing told her she had Mongolian blood in her. And then I thought about it. Well, hell, the Mongols made it all the way to Germany, and
Yeah.
they didn't go down. They at night they didn't put their go to their bed and sleep. They probably caroused a little bit.
Do you think so? Do you think such a thing could have happened?
Well, I'm told that.
I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you.
Well, the it is fun. Now, taking you back to another book that I know this is like. Well, Bob had a curious question. How did you feel the country of Israel kind of in your World War series turned out to be a little have a to lend a little darkness to the plot? Or I felt like it did when
Well,
it sided with the aliens.
um, if your choice is siding with the aliens and maybe living, or siding with the Nazis and pretty definitely not living, what are you going to do?
I don't know. I mean, you made a decision, you executed it, and you wrote a viable, believable scenario in it.
I mean, there are sometimes you are just between a rock and a hard place. I mean, in 1940, the Jews in the Baltic republics supported the Soviet annexation of Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania because the alternative was Hitler. And then, of course, in 1941, Hitler rolled through the Baltics anyway. And all the people there had one more reason to hate their local Jews, and cooperated quite enthusiastically with the Holocaust.
That they did.
Sometimes you just get put in an impossible position. I think this is also part of what being Jewish is all about, is getting put in impossible positions, but there's not much I can do about that.
You, yeah, you answered my question. And it just struck me that had to have been a difficult uh, plot line to develop, but you explained it so straightforwardly, and now I'm thinking it just was
I mean,
obvious.
well, you try not to write plots that are obvious to the
Well,
reader,
but
even
you
if they are.
also try to write ones that once if you presented it to them cold, they'd say, "Oh no, that could never happen." But if you build it into your book and write it, you make it feel like it's an inevitable outcome of the system of the world that you're in.
You try to be plausible. Most of the time, you try to be plausible. Sometimes you just try to be silly, and that's
Oh,
fun.
that's
But
my shtick. Uh,
I have been known to do this. But you do the best you can. You try to be plausible. You try to be interesting. You try not to lie too hard unless you're lying on purpose. You try not to be dumb about things that you can
Try not to be
avoid.
what?
Dumb about things that you can avoid being dumb about.
There goes my career. Okay. the But yeah, God, this is like sitting here having been starved and all of a sudden being invited to a smorgasbord. You're such a pleasure there. So what do you want to talk about now?
Well, let's see. As long as I'm here, and as long as there are people rash enough to be listening to me, I will strongly recommend that you buy my books. Isn't that what I'm sure that amazes you all? I've had three come out this year. One, well, actually, I haven't had one come out yet because it's out day after tomorrow. That's Powerless. I have a fantasy that's based on Paris just before and just after it's liberated from the Nazis, called City in Chains. And I also have the first book of several about Jack Mitchell, noirish detective in a Los Angeles full of vampires and werewolves
Zombies too,
and
right?
ghosts.
You have
Hmm.
a zombie in that one? That's what I thought.
Yes,
I thought
there's a
I'd read
zombie
that
in that
that
one.
one had that.
Yep.
But yeah, you've just ruined my reading list.
And somebody in your comments list has just mentioned 3 Miles Down, which came out, if I remember correctly, in 2022, which is a story about Project Azorian, where we spent about a moon landing's worth of money to pull a Soviet submarine that sank in the Pacific 3 miles underwater up so we could examine their missiles and get their code books. And we raised about a third of the submarine, and it wasn't really the third we wanted. But it occurred to me, what if that submarine sank because an alien spaceship on the bottom of the Pacific sank it?
Yeah, that is the most
And
powerful.
I went from there. the character, the protagonist, Jerry Stieglitz, bears a certain resemblance to me because it's set in 1974-75. He's a grad student at UCLA. Of course, I don't know anything about being a grad student at UCLA in 1974-75. And he's about to be married to this gal who bears a certain resemblance, not physically, but otherwise, to somebody I might have been married to back about then, before I knew Laura. He's an aspiring science fiction writer. Actually, he started to sell by 1974-75, which puts him ahead of me because I didn't sell till 77. But there are resemblances.
Well, that is like a really good list of books to look forward to coming out. Now, I have a book coming out here that I didn't write. I'm the editor, but you have featured heavily in it during every planning session going forward. Yeah,
Okay.
you sold a story, and I don't remember the story, to a fella that was writing about diasporas about 20 years ago. And
I'm sorry, writing about what?
diaspora.
Oh,
And
yes. Uh-huh.
I wrote a story for that book, and it was my very first sale. And my
Okay.
story was called Scott's Planet. It was about a planet that got colonized during the salad days of colonization, and then they
Right.
found out it cost money to maintain the planets, and they said, let's stop this stuff, and they abandoned a bunch of them in place. And this was a planet where a high oxygen content, and the chickens were bred to grow a little larger, and so they had 3 foot tall chickens. And they when they sent out the um, page proofs on it, I got an email from you. Now I know it was a standard email you probably send out to everybody you're in a book with, but I, on the other hand, said no. It's because Harry read my story. But
I did read your story. I read it. I know which
yeah,
anthology you're talking about. Lancer Kinn's
yeah.
anthology. I
You
remember
sent me
that
a
one.
note that said, "Nice story."
Well, it
Well, thank
was.
you. Um, and so that story stuck with me in my brain, and for the last 15 years, I've wanted to do an anthology, but I had no idea how to do one until Trump came along and made me realize that, oh, all you need is a good villain and a common theme. And so I finally said, hey guys, read this story. Would you guys be willing to submit a story for a shared world? And it filled up faster than I could imagine. Um, and so you are partially to blame. And
All
thank you.
right. I
Uh, but, it's like, it was a 2 word email. Well, actually, if you considered your name at the bottom of it, but I, that one is coming out from B Cube Press here, and should be out before um, the Worldcon. And we're at that part of it
okay.
where now I'm alerting my readers what's coming up, and we have also right after Worldcon, we're going to start taking, as you guys knew, that Alternative Liberties is getting another crack, and we're going to let Harry know and everything. And oh, Dale, 20-pound lobsters, no. We have the equivalent of millipedes that are a meter. The small ones are about a meter long, and the big ones are about 3 meters long, but they do taste like lobster.
Oh, well, that's good because millipedes by themselves, real ones are
Or
nasty
what?
or
Well,
nasty.
what are the potato
They,
bugs?
they, what do you call a
Not
potato
potato
bug? I've
bug.
heard various.
Roly polies.
Oh yeah,
Huh?
sow bugs.
Sow
Sow
bugs. Yes,
bugs.
they're known as that.
Yeah,
Um, they're
yeah,
tasty, properly prepared,
yeah.
and so.
You need a lot of them though. They
But
have a
if you
lot of
can get
roughage.
one that's 3 meters long,
That's yeah. Of course, he may eat you, but that's
well, I figure it's all in the cleaning. You know, the it's just like cleaning any fish or any animal. There's things that if you don't cut off, you're going to regret it when you cook it. Uh,
yeah.
and So anyway, yeah, it's set in the Carboniferous planet that's in the Carboniferous period, and uh, we have pugs. Pugs were one of the approved breeds of dog that they allowed to go on transport out because they
Okay.
realized that they weren't going to be needing them for hunting and fishing and stuff like that. They were going to be primarily companion animals, and a pug has been bred for 3,000 years to be the best companion animal.
Okay.
So we've got that. And I had people complaining that why couldn't they have the dog they liked?
Because it's
And
your
I
story.
pointed, and it wasn't in my original story, but I pointed to the contract and said the name at the top of the contract. But that was a fun time pulling together that uh, the the Bible for that one. I had to
Mm-hmm.
get an astrophysicist, uh, kind of a rocket scientist, to help
Excuse me.
me.
I have done this.
Yeah, the so it all works. So anyway, we got that coming out. We have um, preparing in the fall to do the Alternative Liberties 2. And that is the big one, except for I have a book that Phyllis Irene Radford and I wrote together that is
Okay.
the um, a space alien is chasing a warlord to Earth, and the warlord gets trapped. Everybody thinks he's dead. The space alien gets trapped, and then wakes up one day and finds out that the warlord is still alive. Starts causing a few international incidents, trying to do his duty to catch him. And the principal essence there is, Harry, I'm sure you know what a 12er is. The
Yes.
warlord takes on um, the identity of the 12th Mahdi, and yeah, that's his tool for taking
Okay.
over the earth is to do it from the Middle East as the 12th Mahdi, and we loved writing it. I loved the research. God, the research was fun.
This has definite points of contact with my sort of supernatural thriller Alpha and Omega.
Well, I will confess I haven't read it, but I will as soon as we get this one out the door.
Yeah, that's the right
At
time to do it.
I So that's BQ Press is not going away, and we are attending Worldcon. Are you going to be at Worldcon, Harry?
I am not going to be in Seattle, unfortunately. I may well be in LA next year, but I mean that's close enough to drive very conveniently.
Now, do
But
you live in LA?
I I live in LA. Yes, I live up in the San Fernando
Oh,
Valley.
you must miss David.
I do because I mean, David would come over here for dinner fairly often. So yeah, I miss David.
Here's what David did. That David must have read the article that said Vermont is the most survivable state in the union for nuclear weapon attack.
No, David's son and his wife have two kids now, and they wanted to raise them back there, and David went with them, and that's fine. That's terrific.
Well, David keeps his fans posted about what's going on in his world. As we were
Mm-hmm.
watching the move take place, all the details here, the house inspections, that and
Oh yes, all the
the
fun.
oh, and by the way, Charlie looks like Crypto. I don't think that was a mistake. Uh, I think David called him up, sent him a picture, and says, "Do it." Uh, but it's pretty fun. So that's what's going on in BQ Press's world, and that's we got the new books. Tell us again what they are, so that we can be reminded.
The noirish post-war Los Angeles urban fantasy is Twice as Dead. The fantasy about an occupied city a lot like Paris is City in Chains. And coming out day after tomorrow is Powerless, a rather depressing alternate history.
And honest to God, that's the one that sounds so interesting to me, because a grocery store, a clerk, grocer, you know,
Yep.
uh, and just what troubles can happen there, and but brilliant stuff. Now it is 10 o'clock. So David, do you have any? I'm sorry, Harry. Do you have anything else you want to make sure we know about before we walk away?
My books are available almost everywhere. You can find them. It's not hard. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them at Barnes and Noble if you don't like Amazon. You can get them at Powell's or anywhere else if you don't like either Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Buy them. Keep me in shoes, even though I'm not wearing them in the
Well, here's the
summertime.
bright side. You're also soon going to be able to find one or two books from a series here and there out in my little lending library out front. The That'll be the fun part. They read one. I think I'll limit it to the first book in a series, and because
The, the first one's always free.
don't laugh. When you used to remember when
I'm not.
DVDs came out, they would do season one, $9.99. You would do it, and you say that's pretty good. Season two, $29.99.
Yep.
And but as any time I can say this, with one exception, the first one has always been as good as the rest. And the only reason I'm saying is I love your work, but I had trouble with the Guns of the South.
Well, there's no sequel there,
What?
so there's no sequel.
Yeah.
It stands alone. It does what it
Oh, it did
does.
what it did and did it well. It's just that no, I don't want to give these people automatic weapons. These are bad people. Let's not do this.
Well, the people who give them the automatic weapons are not exactly nice people
No,
themselves, which is kind of the
I
point.
never saw such a great collection of bad people get together to do bad things. Um, but
I'm exceedingly fond of that book for two reasons. One, I didn't intend to write it, and two, it's the book that let me quit my day
oh
job.
well,
So yeah.
you see, that is good. The Because it's not a bad book. It's a good book, well written and everything. It is just that the subject matter, uh, uh, growing up in the South, I it was like I told you this once. My family name is Featherston, and so here it is. It's like, yeah, I know that Featherston, and I know that Featherston. What did you do? Go through my uh, family album? But they were good, and you were good. You do great books, and
Thank you
I
very
love them.
much. I really
And so I look forward to hopefully seeing you again on here, and especially we had the pleasure last week of having Laura, and
yeah.
I can I just you two are the best guests we've had, And so
Well, thank you
you
very
be
much.
good. And I'm going to